Alright, I'm at it again with my new to me Swift Caspain Sea. So what I've discovered is these hatches came with originally a neoprene cover, and that would provide a seal, and then this goes over and gets tied down over the neoprene cover. Well, I don't have a neoprene cover, but I need a seal, so what I've decided to do is I'm going to use some silicone caulk. My original thought was to put a bead on the inside here. The problem is I don't know exactly where those match up, and I'm only going to be guessing at it. So what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to put some saran wrap over the hatch, and then put a bead of caulk on the saran wrap, and then put the cover on top and let it cure that way, and that should hopefully get me what I need. I'm just gonna wash up the inside of this first, make sure it's nice and clean to accept the caulk, and I'll show you how that goes, and we'll see how it turns out in the end. Alright, so I got that on there. I've cut a piece of shock cord, you know, the elastic cord, to hold that on there. It's slightly smaller than the circumference, so let's get that on there and see what it looks like. Alright, so the shock cord's in place, and I'm just going to try to smooth that out as much as I can before I put my bead of caulk around it, and then I'll put the cover down. Not the neatest bead of caulk in the world, but I think when I put the other thing down it will all work out. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want it bleeding into my shock cord there. I just want to get it down firmly and let it set up. Let's hope for the best. I'm going to do both of them without seeing how the first one turns out. Worst case, I have to cut that all out of there manually, but it should produce something halfway's worthwhile. Oh, I just thought of something. I guess I will be able to get the shock cord off. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I may have trouble getting that up, but worst case I can just grab it by this corner and pull, and that should pop the shock cord. Alright. Alright, this is the small hatch, and it turns out this ridge is a lot narrower, so the shock cord doesn't fit under there very well. I'm going to need narrower shock cord if I want to do that here. So I'm just going to put my bead down here anyway. I think I've got this so it's going to stay put. And I'll just put my bead down, put the lid on top. Alright, again, it's not the best caulking job in the world, but I think it will suffice. Put this guy down. At least on this one, I shouldn't have the issue of getting it back up again because there's no shock cord under there. Alright, well, let's hope that in a few hours I can pull those up and everything will be exactly as I've been hoping. Alright, it's been maybe an hour. I'm just gonna see here. It should come up nicely. Let's have a look. So this is looking pretty good to me. So now I've got a precise bead around here that perfectly fits the form of this lip, and that means in theory it might form a pretty good seal just like it is. If not, now I know exactly where to put an extra bead of silicone along here. See, my initial thought was putting it closer to the edge, so this is actually a pretty good plan from what I see. I'm fairly certain, I've got a very good feeling, I'm not certain yet, I've got a very good feeling that this is going to work well. I'm just going to put it back on there and let it all firm up because that's still pretty soft. Alright, I haven't really been keeping time, but it's probably 2 hours since I started this, Something I didn't test in advance is whether or not this is going to peel off, but I just did some testing, and it might be difficult to do with just one hand and operating the camera, but it does, and it's still not fully cured, so it does peel off relatively easily. When it's fully cured, I think it'll peel off there just fine, as long as there's no areas where it's pinched into the silicone. So I think this is going to work. Alright, I did manage to get the big hatch up, even with that shock cord around it. Minor flaw in my caulking here, so I'm going to give that a little wee squirt and then put it back on without the shock cord. But in general, and this, like I said with the other one, the saran wrap is coming off really easily, so I think this is going to work well. I'm going to put some more caulk on here, maybe fill in a couple of gaps right here, and then put it back on. So I wasn't sure what to do, how to attach the shock cord on. I think I've come up with something that'll work. Depends on how well this mess works. I want to be able to remove the hatch completely, so what I did was put shock cord in a triangle here, and I just attached an S-binder here. I can't stretch this yet because this isn't set up, and just stretch that over and clip it on, and then I can get the hatch off fully if I need to. This is just a terrible mess of 5-minute epoxy. I'm going to cut all the cellophane away, or whatever it's called, and it's just this two-part, oh geez, I made a mess of it. Quick Cure 5, and it's a terrible mess right now. I had it stored away improperly and it was leaking. So 2-part epoxy, 5-minute cure time, and I just kind of put the cellophane under it. I had gloves on and poured the mixed epoxy along there and held it together, and I think when it sets up it should hold. We'll see how well it does. Worst case, I will trim all that off and then put some electrical tape or something around it. We'll see. Alright, I got the big hatch done up with the shock cord as well. You can see, I mean, I didn't do an especially great job with the epoxy. We'll see how that holds in the long term, but I think it's going to be fine. And same deal here. We've got the S-binder, and you just pull that over and clip it in. Alright, I think we're doing pretty good here. And this guy, I already showed it actually. It's curing up nicely, that silicone gasket that I made. So one thing I'm worried about with the S-binder is just the metal over time scraping up against there. So one thing I thought of as an alternative, and I'll try both. There it goes. So as an alternative, I thought of one of these gear ties. Basically pull this down, loop this through the shock cord. So loop it through the shock cord and then just fold it back on itself like that. So I got a couple of those as well. In fact, just looking at this now, I think this is a better system than the S-binder, so I'll probably go with that. And that's the things that I'm using there. They make them in all different sizes, and with and without the loop on the end. Alright, here's what it all looks like on my big hatch. It's come together really nicely. Pretty sure that epoxy is going to hold there. We'll see in the long run. If not, it'll be easy to deal with. But it will have soaked into this mesh on the outside fairly well, so I think it's going to be okay. Here's my latch mechanism, just with these guys, and you can see I can do that one-handed. I'll maybe eventually find something better than that, so then the latch is permanently fixed on here, which may or may not be an issue, I don't know. I've never really kayaked before. Anyway, the big thing I'm showing off is my gasket, It looks like it's turned out really well. I guess time will tell when we get it in the water. Does it keep the water out of the compartments? But so far I am really digging this. It seems like it's going to work out.